All right. Thank you to everyone for attending. My name is Corey Singleton. I manage the Assistive Technology Initiative here at George Mason University. Um, this is meant to be kind of an open, free-flowing session, so please feel free to chime in with questions. Um, I'd rather not lecture. I'm hoping we could just kind of talk and work through these things together and kind of learn together. But I do want to take a few minutes in the beginning just to talk to you a little bit about digital access and specifically about document accessibility, and then just kind of go over some of the basics of accessible document design, why we do these things, kind of the purpose for my office existing, as well as what we try to do for the Mason community. So this is me. This is my face. The ATI website is ati.gmu.edu. We have a number of resources on there dealing with digital accessibility, not only resources around accessible documents and creating accessible documents, but captioning and transcription, web accessibility, creating accessible or creating alternative formats for textbooks, assistive technology tools and resources out there. So please take some time to review our website if you have questions about anything that we do. You can also email us directly at ati@gmu.edu. So my face is up there, so you can put a face with the name. If you see me on campus when you're back on campus, feel free to stop me and say hello. Um, just some information around the tools that are available to you. This is not a webinar session, so with it being Zoom meetings, you have the ability to mute and unmute your mic at any point in time. I just ask that you stay muted until you have a question. You can start and stop your own video. Feel free to post any chat questions or any questions that you may have in the chat, or raise your hand to be called on. That way we can get those things out in a fairly orderly fashion. And then under the participants button and under the reactions area, you should have the ability to provide any kind of nonverbal feedback. Just a quick thumbs up or a yes or no, anything like that may be helpful if I ask some questions just to kind of gauge where the crowd is. So the agenda, quick intros, I've done mine. Why it's important that we create an accessible PDF. I'll do a quick demonstration, probably just using the Word document of what uh, what we look for when we talk about an accessible document, and then creating accessible PDFs not only from Word and PowerPoint, but fixing those that we may receive where we don't know where the document was created at, what source it kind of originated from. So before we go, and I probably should have done this as a poll, but I will do it by a raise of hands if we can do so. Um, would you kind of let me know? Um, Actually, you know what? Let's just throw it in the chat. So you can give me a quick idea of what office you're located in, why you have an interest in accessible document design. Do you deal with digital publications? Is it mainly for engaging with students? Just a quick synopsis of where you're from and why you might be interested in this session. We'll take a couple of seconds to do that. Great. Great. All right. So it looks like most folks we're all across the campus, which is great. And most folks are in situations where they're dealing with a number of PDF documents, whether it be for publications, for newsletters, forms that students may need to fill out, or things like that. And you have questions about how to make some of these resources accessible. So that's great. That's something our office can definitely help out with. Now, in addition to training, we will also help with remediating and fixing some of these resources for you as well. So I will address that as we get closer towards the end of the session. Okay, so importance of creating accessible PDFs. And this is, I'm going to go through this fairly quickly, I hope. On the left-hand side, we have those scales. There are a lot of legal implications for the institution when it comes to accessible documents. Any documents that we have posted on front-facing websites or that are used in our classes, um, if we speak to it from a risk management standpoint, that exposes the university in the sense that if there is inaccessible content up there, meaning someone who uses assistive technology like screen reading software or text-to-speech tools cannot engage with the content in any way, then they are being denied access or equivalent access to any of the programs and services that we have here on campus. And that can be any forms we require students to fill out, completing an application online for a job or or for participation in a summer program or something like that. Or it could be as simple as advertisements that we send around students not being able to access that information. And so for those reasons, it's really important that we make sure that our content's accessible. If we were to, for example, be a file, if there was a lawsuit filed against us for denying someone equivalent access to these resources, that would not only impact the unit where that document originated from, but it would reverberate across the campus because it would then put in place requirements that we would all need to follow in order to make content accessible. And that we have policies in place, we have procedures in place, but it would kind of go to another level if the Office of Civil Rights, which is a part of the Department of Ed, was reviewing what we have in place on campus and what supports we have in place in our number of different units to make sure that content's accessible. So legally, one of the things we try to do, at least from our office's perspective, is to try and mitigate risk as much as possible. And so this training is kind of a part of that effort, as well as the remediation services that we offer. We also have academic implications. For those who don't know, we have a tool that is embedded in Blackboard called Blackboard Ally. It will assess the level of accessibility of the resources that we have uploaded in our course sites. So it will look at not only documents that are uploaded, images that are uploaded, the content that's uploaded for accessibility purposes. And one of the things it can do is break down the number of documents that are uploaded to all of our Blackboard courses, as well as specific to department and broken down into course level as well. So across all of our departments, we have roughly, I think it's a little over 100,000 documents online. That's Word, PowerPoint, PDF, etc. if there are any other formats. Of the PDFs, there are 12,000 of them that are just images. And by that meaning, if it's an image and you don't really have any kind of visual or visual processing challenges, then you have the ability to see the content, engage with it, and you're probably fine. If you're someone with some degree of visual impairment or learning impairment where it's difficult to process information and you need the help of some type of a screen reader or text-to-speech aid, then it may be really difficult to engage with that content. And 12,000 of the PDFs that we have sitting in our course sites right now are just images. We don't know exactly where all of those are yet, and we haven't broken down exactly where all those are, but it gives you a sense that there are some potential challenges for us in terms of working with faculty members in academic units to identify where those problem documents are and figuring out how to get that information out in an alternative way, if that doesn't exist already. And then finally, just from an inclusion standpoint, we want to make sure that all of our digital resources are as accessible as possible. So I would say this, the more accessible our content is, the more people we reach. So if our goal is to enroll more students in our office, if our forms are inaccessible, then there are some students we're denying access to. If we have some students, who are assistive technology users that are denied access for one reason or another, they may not enroll in classes, which can impact the university in another way. So from a digital inclusion standpoint, we want to make sure that people, as many people as possible, can show up at the time they need to show up to access the content that we make available to the community. And so this kind of gives you three buckets we're kind of thinking when we think about the importance not only of PDFs or Word documents or anything like that, but any of the digital resources that we put out there. And so throughout this presentation, or rather throughout today, our meeting today, I've kind of built in a series of stops just to see if we have questions, kind of talk about these things on the fly. So with that said, do we have any questions based on that quick synopsis I've just thrown out? Okay, I will take your silence as me moving on. All right, so let's move on. All right, so I want to do a quick demonstration. First, let me go back to, did everyone get a chance to review the information that I emailed out yesterday? That would have been the 2 videos I shared. That would have also included the exercise files. There was a link to the folder that included all the exercise files. And there was a link to a resource that I started to kind of pull together a while ago on how to make PDFs accessible. All right. So let me assume, I'm not hearing much, so let me assume that we are going to do a quick once over on that stuff. All right. So let's talk about what an accessible document is. All right. And I'm going to come out of this, share my full screen here, just so we can all get on the same page. All right, so this document I have in front of you is the Word to PDF structured document. It would be in your exercise folders and exercise files if you want to kind of take a look at it. One of the things that's very important when it comes to making a document accessible is including structure in that document. And everything I'm telling you now applies to PDF as well, but I'm starting with the source files, Word and PowerPoint, so you have a better understanding of the kind of start to finish of the process. So in the Word document, it's important that you add styles which indicate headings. So for example, I'm highlighting how people generate emotions, and here's this style up here, heading 1 that I have it applied to. I can make this text look exactly the same and then have it be normal text, but it would not show up as a heading. And one way to kind of check that is if I go to the View menu and click on the navigation pane, you'll see this Headings tab over here on the left-hand side. And it kind of breaks everything down pretty much in the outline format. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that when you are actually using this navigation, or rather when you're using styles, you are automatically creating an outline for your document. So if you go back later on and you decide I want to, insert a table of contents somewhere, you can, it will immediately do that based on the structure that you've added with these styles, right? So we have our heading 1, which is how people generate emotions. Heading 2, or the subheading, is a tale of two minds. And then as I go on throughout the document, I label this manage your emotions as a heading 1. And I can actually click through this area over here and move through the document as well. So if I click slow down, treat yourself with compassion, experience and name your emotions, this is a much more user-friendly document for everyone. All right. This underlying structure that you use with styles actually works because screen reading tools will pull these styles out and use it basically as kind of a navigation feature for the document. So the way a screen reader works is designed for someone who reads, someone who with little usable vision for a computer. So it reads everything out. It reads the menus. It reads the text on a page. It may read alerts that pop up. And I'll give you a quick demo in a second. But for that reason, they may not be able to scan the document the same way you and I do. And if they have to go through a syllabus that's maybe 20 pages long to get to the course schedule, as I was talking about in the video, it may be a very difficult thing to sit through 19 pages before you actually get to the content you're looking for. And so for that reason, we build in structure to make it easier for those individuals to navigate the document. Now, in turn, that benefits everybody, but it also really benefits those who are assistive technology users. So I'll continue to click through this navigation list, and I'll pull up an unstructured resource so you can see how to do this on your own, right? So first, let me demonstrate how this looks for a screen reader user. I'm going to pull up a tool called NVDA. It is a free screen reading tool.
Welcome to NVDA dialog.
Now I'm going to go up here. Give me 1 second.
Exit NVDA.
Things get funky when you pull up. Let me see. There we go. Let me share my computer sound so you can hear it.
There, show. Oh, understanding.
All right, just a quick
Video.
thumbs up if you can hear the.
People express their emotions indirectly in two ways, verbally or non-verbally. Indirect verbal how people generate. Mike, more, chat, word to.
All right, great. All right. So the reason I did not share the link to NVDA is it can be a little jarring for folks who aren't familiar with working with a screen reader, but I'm just going to hit the down arrow key so you can see how it reads.
Understanding how you and the group members heading level 1, how people generate emotions.
Now, one thing you'll notice is that when it encounters a heading, it will say heading level 1 and then read the text.
Understanding how you and the group members generate and deal with emotions can help you work effectively. Coleman. Heading level 2, A Tale of Two Minds.
All right, so now I'm just using the down arrow key. I can set it to automatically continue reading, but I'm not going to do that for the purpose of this demonstration. One other way you can quickly move through the document is using H for headings.
Page 2, Section 1, Managing Your Own Emotions, heading level 1. Page 3, Slow Down, heading level 2. Treat Yourself with Compassion, heading level 2.
And I'm just using the H key here.
Experience and Name Your Emotions, heading level 2. Identify the source, heading level 2.
Now if I hold down Shift and hit H again, it goes backwards.
Experience and Name Your Emotion. Treat Yourself with Compassion, heading level 2.
All right, now this is following what we talked about earlier.
Hide word view.
Which when we go up here and open up the navigation pane, it's pretty much following this list over here.
Identify the source, heading level 2. From Christine Nibber to everyone. Also, VoiceOver on the Mac is built in and a full-service screen reading program. Alert. Page 4, Remind yourself of your skills, heading level 2. Deciding how to intervene, heading level 1.
Now that was actually a perfect demonstration because Christine sent a message to everyone through chat and it picked that up and read that out loud while you're also kind of in the middle of things. So you can see how for someone who can't see all of these things happening at the same time, the screen reader is a really beneficial way for them to access information. Now I'm going to pull up this same document when it's unstructured, meaning we haven't added any headings to the document.
Home grouping, good afternoon. Word to PDF, word to P, how P.
All right, so this is that same document. It's unstructured. On the left-hand side, you'll see that we have no headings. Visually, you can see we have headings. We have how people generate emotions. We have a tale of two minds.
Destiny Spencer has joined the meeting.
We did not add any structure to the headings.
How people generate emotions.
And so one quick way to identify that there's no structure is that when I click on it, and my cursor is sitting here, you can see that it's set up under normal, right?
How people generate emotions.
It's also not reading a heading as I move through the text.
Understanding how you and the alert. Robert Star Gabby is anticipating.
I have all my pop-ups going now.
There is a physiologic page down moves the. There is a word to PDF. A tale of two minds.
So it doesn't read any of these things. So that's kind of a quick way of understanding the benefit of using the screen reader in a document, so that you understand how to make these things work. So now let's go through. I'm going to turn the screen reader off.
Exit NVDA.
You can't hear all my
Word.
pop-ups anymore. And one thing I want you to pay attention to is how we go about adding headings now. And so what you can do is you can simply select the text that you want to make a heading, and then you can come up in here into the styles bar and click the style you want it to be. Now, if you don't like it this size, one thing I can do is make it 12 point, and then I can say, all right, I want all of my heading ones to be 12 point font. I want them to be italicized. If I wanted that, I could. And then what I'll do is I'll right click on it and say update to match the selection. So that means all my heading ones will now be 12 point font bold. And if I want my heading twos to look a certain way, I can go and click heading 2. I can change it to be whatever font I want it to be. I'm going to italicize them for now. And then I will right click to update the match selection. That means every heading 2 after this will be the same way. So I'll click there, I'll say heading 1, and notice how on the left hand side we have our navigation being added. Now the reason I'm doing this is a precursor to everything we're doing related to a PDF. The way you create an accessible PDF is by making sure the source document is accessible. And since we have access to the Word and PowerPoint, we can make accessible PDFs this way. And then we'll also kind of play around with some documents in a little while, which we receive in a PDF format. We don't know what the source is, or rather, we don't have access to the source document. And then we have to go through doing some things to fix it there. All right, so I come to slow down, heading 2, same thing with treat yourself with compassion, and I'll just continue on. So if you're following along, feel free to continue doing the same thing. So I'm going to build out the structure in my document all the way through to the end. All right, so I'll come back up to the top. We have our heading 1, we have our heading 2, and everything seems to be working in a logical order. All right, so let's think about some other things that are beneficial to those who use assistive technology. So if I'm a screen reader user, one of the things that I'm going to struggle with is I do not know what content is available in an image. So one of the things I need to do is make sure that my images are accessible, either mark it as decorative or add some description to it so that when the screen reader encounters it, it will read out the information that's in that image. And so one quick way to do that in Word and PowerPoint is you can right click on the image, and then third from the bottom, you'll see it says edit alt text. And I'll click on that, and I can just say, if it's a, for the purpose of this demonstration, I will add alternative text. However, what I will do is also identify that you can mark it as decorative. If there's no instructional value from the image, if there's nothing to be gained, then you can simply mark it as decorative, and you won't have to worry about adding alternative text. For the purpose of this demonstration, we will add some. I'll just say 2 heads with gears. Now, one question we always receive now, one thing to keep in mind, I am adding like my normal sentence case where I'm doing capitals and periods and all that. I'm not really supposed to do that, or really I don't have to do that. Well, alt text. Alt text is really just there for the screen reader to be able to describe the image. And so I'm just throwing up something there. The other thing that you'll notice, if I were to remove this, I'm going to copy this. You'll see a little pop-up that says generate a description for me. I'm going to click it so you can see what it does. This is Microsoft's idea of what's in this image, close up of a jewel. All right, so never use this tool. All right, never use that ever, ever, ever in life. It is it's a good try, but the technology for identifying um, um, a good alternative text description for an image is just not there yet. It's coming, but it's probably some years down the line. So and it's also just subjective too. The question is the way you embed this image in your document or in your present, whether it be a document or presentation. What do you want the user to take away from it? That's what you focus on as far as the alternative text description. So even if you had a fancy chart or infographic or something like that, what do you want the user to take away from it? It doesn't have to be a very detailed description of everything that's visually there. So I'm going to throw this down here, and then I'm going to come down to the next image, and I'll just say set of emoticons. All right. And so that takes care of that image description. Now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove both of these, and I'm actually going to identify another way to actually identify if there's an issue. So one other thing you can do with your documents is check the level of accessibility. And this works both in Word and PowerPoint. So if I go to the Review tab and I click Check Accessibility, you'll get the accessibility checker results over here on the right-hand side. Now it's identified that I have two images, and it's identified that they're missing alternative text descriptions. Now again, all of these things are things we would have to address in the PDF. So addressing them now will save you some headaches. And usually it works well. Sometimes it's not perfect. You may still need to fix things in the PDF, but it's still best practice to take care of it. So if I highlight the first image, it actually moves to that location in the document. If I click the drop down, I can identify here whether I want to mark it as decorative or add a description. So I will go ahead and add my description. And then this little button here is the accessibility checker. I can go right back to it. Now you see picture one disappears because I have an alternative text description now. Now if I go to picture two, it will move down. I'm going to go here and add a description, and I will say set of emoticons. And when I go back to click on the accessibility checker again, you'll see that disappears. Right, so now I'll no longer have those issues anymore. Now another error that pops up with the pictures is image is not in line with text. Now what that means from an assistive technology standpoint is usually if you place this in line, let me show you what happens. Actually, let me show you, it'll be better with this one. This image takes up the entire length of the text. So the inline is not going to make, it's not going to make you think about it the same way. So let me show you what happens here. Here we're kind of floating the image, and that allows the text to kind of wrap around it. If I set it to inline with picture two, you'll see it kind of adds it as if it were part of the text here. And the way that works is if a screen reader is reading through, it's going to say manage your emotions. Then it's going to go to the alternative text description for the image. Then it's going to continue in the text. So if this image is floated in the middle, for example, and I'm just dragging it, you see the cursor moving. You see how it's now in the middle of the text? And so you, as the designer of this document, you have to sometimes make the decision on whether or not you really want this to be a floating image, or whether you would, for example, move it up here to the front and just float it right there. You can center it if you want it to be in the center. So you'll make some design decisions where you may not always get rid of all the errors there. And it's more so because you're making a design decision about the document. Now, if I were to do this, I can also, I can make this mark it as decorative so that a screen reader actually skips over it. When you mark something as decorative, screen reader just moves past it as if it's background information that you don't need to know. So That's the issue with inline that you have to think about. Now, if you want the person to have access to the alternative text description at a certain point when it's reading through the document, then it's best that you move the image in that place. So if I want them to actually read through this text before they get to an image, and that may be useful if I'm providing a description of a chart or graph here in the text before they actually get to the chart or graph, that may be a useful use case. Oh, that may be a use case to kind of think about where you actually float the image. All right, so I'll take a quick stop. Does all of this make sense so far? Just a quick thumbs up if you're good. All right, cool. I see some heads nodding, see some thumbs up. All right, perfect. Okay. And so I'm going to go and I'm actually going to leave both of them back where they were and just live with the error for now. All right, so now we've added structure to our document. We've done our accessibility check and we're happy for the most part with the issues that we're leaving behind. All right, and so now we want to create an accessible PDF from this. And so how do we go about doing that? There are a couple of different ways to do that in Word and PowerPoint. And so the first way I'll show you is the way that's built into a Word document. So if you click on the File menu and you go down to Export, you have a couple of different options up here. You have Create Adobe PDF and you have Create PDF XPS Document. This PDF XPS document is the Microsoft's version of this converter tool. Now, it used to be that XPS was this format that Microsoft was creating to compete with Adobe in the PDF, and it just never quite materialized. So, but it's still hanging out there. And so what you're going to do is you'll click on Create PDF XPS Document. You click the button for Create PDF. All right, so we're in our exercise file. So I will just say, I'm going to remove no structure. I'm going to say version 1. All right, so I will click, before I go to publish. So after you name it, then you're going to click on options. All right, and under the options field, you have a few different things to consider here. You're mainly focused on this include non-printing information section. And there are 3 checkboxes. There's a create bookmarks using, and you have the choice between headings or word bookmarks. Obviously, we're using headings, so we are going to make sure that bookmarks get created in our PDF document using the headings that we created in our Word document. Document properties has to do with who the owner of the document is, if we've added the title. We want any of the information that we've added in our Word document to carry over into our PDF document. If it doesn't, then Acrobat is going to recognize it as an error, and we will have to fix that issue. We'll take a look at that too. The next part is document structure tags for accessibility. Essentially, any tags that you've added in a document will then get carried over. So let's say, for example, so actually, let me continue through real quick. So we'll check those 3. We'll click OK, and then we will click Publish. All right, so let me go, actually, let me go open. I thought it was going to open automatically. It did not. I'm going to go to Presentation, Basin Specific, QLive, PDF accessibility. All right, so here's our version 1 PDF. I'll go ahead and open it here. Now our document looks exactly the same as what we did, right? Headings and everything. And one way to check and see if that information carried over, and we will go over this again, I'm moving through quickly for this part, but we'll go over it again, is when we go to the tags tree, the tags identify all of the underlying structure that gets pulled over from the source document. So we have our heading 1, that's that H1 over on the left-hand side. And I'm just moving the down arrow as I go through the tag tree. It's paragraph, heading 2. It identifies a figure. Heading 2, I'm sorry, here's a paragraph. And then you see it has a link embedded in it as well. as long as you add your hyperlinks in to your original source document, those things will carry over. That's part of that um, um, convert structure tags for accessibility. So if you added a link, or you've added a numbered list, or you've added a bulleted list, those things will get carried over and identified as links in your PDF, and identified as numbered and bulleted lists in your PDF as well. So I'm continuing to go through just so you can see how it's identified everything. So it's identifying our figures. All right. So that's how all that looks. The main thing to pay attention to is that the work you did on your headings, the work you did on your links, those carry through. Paragraph information is going to carry through naturally, but all of your heading work and your links that you've added, that's all going to carry through naturally. Now I'm going to do a quick accessibility check to see how it's looking at our figures. So if I go and do an accessibility check, and again, we're going to go over all of this. Alternate format is where it would normally flag if there was missing alternative text for any of your images. Since we've added those, it's passed, and we don't have to worry about that error. All right. The only two errors it is flagging are errors that you're going to see on every PDF document, which is logical reading order, because that manually has to be determined. You manually have to look at the document and say, am I reading this in the way it's intended to be read? And then color contrast, that's also a manual thing. These are not things tools are going to do or be able to check in an automated way. Okay, so now let me show you the same document. If I come back, no structure. All right, I did, yeah, I didn't add all the structure, didn't I? So let me come back, and I'm just gonna remove the structure real quick, but I'm gonna make it look like it looked originally. The document was on auto save, so as I'm making changes to all of this no structural stuff, it saved everything.
Corey, you have a question in the chat.
Gotcha. Go for it.
How should you manage texts that have web URLs?
Web URLs, great question. All right, so normally what you want to do, this is not a long one, and mostly anybody, Mason probably can infer that this is probably the Mason homepage. But normally what you want to do with these kinds of links is when you don't want to add web URLs, because the screen reader is going to read all of that literally, meaning it's going to read http://mason.gmu.edu is what it says. It doesn't even say edu, it says edu. And if you have a /diversity /this /, it's going to keep reading all that information. And so the problem with that is that someone who cannot visually see the link may not be able to infer exactly where clicking on this link or selecting this link is going to actually take them. So that's when you want to use actual meaningful hyperlink text. So I'll select the link, I'll right click on it, and I will go to edit hyperlink. And so the text to display is what we want to change. You want the address to remain the same, but you want it to say something like George Mason University homepage or something like that. So it displays this way, but the underlying hyperlink is still there. And if I click on it, it's going to take me to GMU's homepage. The idea is you want to give them information that gives them a sense of actually where they're going, and not just the URL itself. Does that answer your question? Perfect. Okay, so all right, so let's go back. This is the document that we have no structure in, right? So I'm going to go to View menu, Navigation pane. You can see we don't have anything. I'm going to click on File. I'm going to go to Export, and I'm going to follow the same process for Microsoft's conversion. So no structure, version 1. I'll save it as, click on Options. Although we don't have anything, you'll notice that Create Bookmarks using headings is grayed out. That's grayed out because you don't have any headings in your document, and it can detect that. But it will still carry over your properties if you have any. It will still carry over any other structural tags if you have, like if you use the numbered list or the bulleted list or things like that, or the hyperlink, for example. So I click OK, click Publish, and then I will pull this same document up. And so this is our no structure V1. And so when I come here, you'll see I have a bunch of paragraph tags. No headings are identified. Visually, you can see there are headings. And so the problem with this is that for someone who uses a screen reader, they're unable to then navigate the underlying structure of the document. They can't use those headings as an outline to kind of quickly move through the document. They got to read left, right, top to bottom to go through all of that information. And so that is an accessible document in the sense that they can hear the information, but it's not a user-friendly document, then that they can't move through it and interact with it in a more effective way. So let me show you the same version 1 document. All right, our headings and everything. So I'm going to come back to the one we structured, and I'm going to save it a different way. You go to File, and we can do one of two things. We can do Save as Adobe PDF, or I'll go back to Export just for consistency's sake, and do Create Adobe PDF. It's the same thing. These are not any different. You can do one or you can do the other. Either way, you're going in the same direction. This is Adobe's plugin for creating an accessible PDF in Word. Mainly, they feel they can do it better, so they're offering another way to do that. So, say Adobe V1 is what I'll call it. Actually, let me cancel that real quick. Yes. All right, so let me come back to this. I forgot to go into options so you can see the difference. So Adobe V1, and I click on options, you'll see the options are a little bit different under the Acrobat PDF Maker. You have convert document information, enable accessibility and reflow with tag PDF, create bookmarks, and then you can choose between the word headings, the word styles, also the word bookmarks themselves. And you can also convert comments. So you can see the options are slightly different, but from an accessibility standpoint, you're concerned more with the document information, enabling accessibility and reflow, and then creating bookmarks. So roughly the same. The results will be slightly different. So it opens up. I will go into the tag tree, and you will see that it's not much different. So H1, H2, everything else is still recognized for the same, for the most part. It doesn't identify the image as a figure. It just makes it, it embeds it under a paragraph tag. These are all little nuanced things between the two different tools. That's mainly what you're concerned about. That's the main takeaway, rather. It's not a concern unless it flags as an accessibility error. So when I go back to accessibility, click on accessibility check. There's one error that comes up, which is the title. The Adobe PDF one didn't pull over the title properly. So I will come back to this error when we get to the PDF part of things. But this is an easy fix. All right, so the last thing I will show you is when you go through, and I already have the copy there, what not to do. So what to absolutely not do is to go in here and click print and then do Microsoft's print to PDF or Adobe's print to PDF. I would avoid those because those tend to strip away all the work you've done. So if you've come in here, you have a structured document, you have your headings and all of that, and everything's working perfectly in your Word document, but then you go print the PDF, then what happens is, let me pull it up, Microsoft Export, and here's our print to PDF structured. Come out of there. No tags available. So it strips away all of that stuff, all of that underlying work you've done, which means that now you have to do it in Adobe and repeat these steps instead of having it pull over automatically. Now you can fix it, it's easy, but it does save you some headaches by just doing all of the work on the front end. And we're coming up on an hour, so I'm going to pull up the PDF portion real quick. I'm sorry, not PDF, PowerPoint. All right, now I'll talk about PowerPoint in the sense that there are a couple of things to take away from this. And then once we get to the 1 hour mark, I'll stop so we can kind of summarize all this stuff. The main thing with PowerPoint is to use the built-in layouts. So if you'll notice, when you go to Layout tab, you see all of this title slide, title and content. Adobe already has specific tags that it will use for these placeholders. So if you come and you decide, hey, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna create a new slide and I want it to be, you know, this custom layout. It says click the add title, so they get a title. But now you start to insert all of these other kind of text boxes and things like that. What happens is it doesn't quite know how to identify these things. So for the most part, it may throw it in as a paragraph tag, or sometimes it may identify it as an image if I insert an image or something like that. So it doesn't quite know what to do with some of these elements. And so it's always important that no matter what you do, use the built-in placeholders that are there. So if I go to create a new slide and I got two content, use these to add your content. So this is where you'd insert your table, this is where you'd insert your graphics or anything like that, because Adobe will automatically recognize those placeholders and try to add tags to those. All right. And so those are oftentimes the most challenging things. Now, when I go to look at an image, it's the same thing. I right click on it. I can go and edit the alt text. I can mark it as decorative. I can handle it however I want to. It's no different than what you do in Word. For bullets and numbered lists, I didn't go over this in Word, but it's the same idea. What you don't want to do is kind of create your own fancy looking bullet list that doesn't necessarily register under here. You want to make sure when you go into any of these list items that these buttons show highlighted. Or if I were to change this to a numbered list, then this button is actually highlighted. That means that Microsoft is identifying this as a list item, which means that then Adobe will identify it as a list item as well. Same thing with tables. You don't want to kind of create your own thing. Like I had, for example, I'll duplicate this. Like there was one document we received at some point where we had somebody basically create a table visually. So they took a line, they created it there. They added another line here. So actually, let me get rid of this. I got rid of like any placeholders that were there. And there we go. They basically started kind of manually creating a table with lines. That's what you don't want to do because none of that is going to be recognized properly. So it's just anything that you can do to avoid trying to manually create something that's automatically there for you. Will save you a lot of headaches when it comes to your PDF. All right. So this is a table, it's built in. When it comes to tables themselves in Word or PowerPoint, you want to make sure that you add specific elements or that it's recognizing specific elements. So for example, in this table, header row checked, meaning that it's identifying this first row as headers. First column's checked, meaning that it's identifying this first column as row headers for this section. Those make a big difference when it comes to screen readers and how they read, and I'll do a demonstration of that. All right, so tables, use a built-in feature there to add your table. Then make sure header row is checked. Make sure first column is checked if it's appropriate that it has row headers. Otherwise, this part is not as critical. What is critical, however, is this this header row up here. I'm just going to check it for now. And then same process, you go to export, and then you can choose Adobe PDF or create PDF XPS document. Again, avoid doing print. And then let me show you what it looks like when you actually go through and do these things. So obviously the first one, print to PDF, it stripped away all of the placeholder information that's there is gone because we printed it as a PDF. When we go to the Microsoft export version, you will see that what it tends to use is all of these different section tags. The section tags don't hinder or hurt accessibility in any kind of way. It doesn't matter that all that information is buried. That's perfectly fine. What I do want you to recognize, however, as I go through all of these, all right, so one quick way to expand all of the tags is to, if I collapse them all, then I hold down the control key and click this arrow, it expands all of the tags, just so you can see everything. The main thing I want you to take away is that on the title slide, it recognizes the title as H1s. And if you go to any of the second slides, it will recognize the title placeholder on any of these additional slides as H2s. So it's kind of creating the outline for you. Whereas in the Word document, you had to identify what's H1 and what's H2. As long as you use the built-in placeholders in PowerPoint, it will identify those items for you. You really don't have to do much work after that. These other spans are pretty much just kind of paragraph tags and information. So you're fine there. Let me come back. Collapse it, it's a little easier to follow. So I'm going to go to this list item here. All right, so this was a list that we put in for slide 3, simply using that bulleted list item. And what it will do is it will identify all of these different bullet points as list items. Each list item includes an L body tag, which is usually the text itself. It may also include a label tag. This one does not include a label tag, but I will point that out. Mainly what's needed is an L body tag for each of them. All right, so you can see how it identifies each of those things automatically as long as you do the work up front. And the next thing I will go to is let me close these. All right, the table. All right, so this was the table we were dealing with. All right, so under each row, it recognizes that information automatically. Okay, so we have our header row. And one way we know that's a header row in our table is because it's identifying each item in that row as a TH tag or table header item. And that impacts how a screen reader reads that information. And we go to the second row where we checked first column, it identifies that first column of information as a table header. And then it's TD tags or table data tags from that point forward. Okay. And then finally, and this will start to make more sense once we get into the PDF side, it does the same exact thing in our last row here. All right, so this is done simply by doing the work on the PowerPoint side or on the Word document side, because everything I showed you here for a table, you would do the same thing in Word. All right.
Hey, Corey.
Yep.
We have a request to show what the screen reader would sound like on a table.
Gotcha.
Welcome to PowerPoint to PDF using the PPT export Adobe page heading level 1. Creating heading level 2 page 4 page 5 page 6 slide number 6 heading level 2 table with 3 rows and 6 columns row 1 column 1M column 2T column 3W column 4TH column 5F edge of table Fred row 2 comp 100 8AM 9:00M.
So one thing I want you to notice is that when I move to the next, I'm going to hit the tab key and go to the Friday column. What it's going to do is identify the headers and then read the data in that cell.
Can you share your audio before you do that?
Thank you.
PPT to PDF exercise files. Power meeting controls.
PowerPoint to Fred row 2.
All right, so I'm sharing my information now. When I move to a new cell, it is going to read the headings first. Usually it will read the table, it will read the column header first, the F, then it will read the row header if there is one next, Fred, and then it will read the data.
Column 6 Psych 100, 8AM 9:00M.
All right, let me go back.
F column 5 Comp 100, 8AM 9:00M. TH column 4 EDUC 100, 8AM 9:00M. W column 3 Math 100, 8AM 9:00M.
Now this is actually reading everything wrong. Now if I go down, one of the reasons it's not reading Fred is because it said it the very first time I went into this row. And so the assumption is if you continue to move left and right, it assumes you're still in the Fred row. So it's supposed to read the column header perfectly. Now there are some nuances between screen readers. The NVDA one can be a little funny about tables, so I'm choosing to use this one instead of the JAWS one because I would have to sign into the VPN to get JAWS to work based on how our server is set up. But the idea is pretty much the same. So let me go down to Jennifer, and then you should hear it. It won't announce the T, but it will announce the Jennifer.
Jennifer row 3 Chem 100, 8AM 9:00M.
Now, when I move to W, it should announce W and then that information, but it won't say Jennifer.
TH column 4 Physical 100, 8AM 9:00M.
So interestingly, it keeps going like a column ahead before it
From
actually
Alan
gets the different
Haladio to
information.
everyone.
And so one thing to keep in mind is that there are going to be some nuances at
Loget has
times.
joined the meeting alert.
Let me turn off NVDA. You can see how annoying
Exit
it can be at
NVDA
times.
dialog.
So let me explain that. But that gives you a sense for how it's supposed to read. So what it's supposed to do is recognize any column or row headers and also read that data. The software interprets whether or not you remain in the same row or remain in the same column in terms of what data it gives you. The reason that you are supposed to actually structure a table properly and identify your headers is because if you do not, it's just going to read the data. So if the screen reader reads Math 100, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., you don't know if that's on Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday or Friday. So for a student trying to access their schedule, it may be a really difficult thing for them to make sense of when they're supposed to go to Math 100. Excuse me, or what room it may be in or something to that effect. All right, so I hope that helps. And obviously the demonstration wasn't perfect, but I'll send you a demonstration where it worked perfectly before. I'll send you a video so you can see exactly how it's supposed to work. All right, so any questions before we move on? Okay, I will take your silence to mean you have everything swimmingly. And you can do this same presentation for me next time. All right, next. All right, so this is what it looks like just if you actually pull in the PowerPoint to PDF using the XPS. converter in Word. This is with the Acrobat plugin. I'm not going to repeat the steps since you've seen them already. And again, it uses section tags, but it also throws these article tags in. These overarching tags like the tag and section and ART for article, and there was another one that said document under the Word document. Don't lose sleep about those things. What matters most is these underlying structural elements like the H tag, H1 tags, the P tag, H2, because technically I can move these around. Like I could drag this up here if I really wanted to, and move them all in some logical flow and order so that it looks nice and clean, and remove them from being embedded up under these articles and section tags. That's just how the converters work. All right, so any questions about the PDF side of things before we move to actually doing some work in the PDF? All good? Thumbs up? Perfect. All right. So let's go ahead. I know we're moving through fast. Normally this is like a 8-hour training that can go over the course of 2 days. So I know I'm moving quickly. So if I'm losing some of you, by all means, please feel free to reach out. One, this is being recorded, but two, feel free to reach out at any time in our office. Christine's been manning the chat, so she or I or Robert or Nancy, any of us are happy to sit down with you, do additional one-on-ones. We can consider this a part one. I'm happy to do a part two in the coming weeks or months, whatever that works too. All right, so let's move on to the next part, which has to do with the PDF side of things. So minimize that, and I'll hide my controls. Turn off the computer sound. All right. So now I'll turn it back on. All right. All right, so I'm going to come back here just to make sure we covered everything real quick. You guys are still seeing the PowerPoint? All right, so cool. So we covered what to do and what not to do when it comes to Office Docs. Use the Publish as PDF or XPS tool. Use the Save as Adobe PDF plugin. Do not use Microsoft's Print to PDF tool. That's going to strip away any of the work you do in the underlying source document. And these are just screenshots which talk you through everything, walk you through what to expect when you use these different tools. And we've gone over all of this. Same thing for the PowerPoint one. Just keep all of these things in mind as you move through and work with them. All right. Okay, so let's go to fixing inaccessible PDFs. So the first thing I'm going to do is we'll talk about, we'll do a quick overview of adding the tools and adding the panes just so you can see what you need to do there. Quick overview of accessibility and accessibility checker. And then we will go through actually making some of these documents accessible. All right, so I'm going to close this one and say no. I'll close this one. And I have up here this Yates document. All right, so this is the PDF. It's a simple one, but it perfectly kind of demonstrates the accessibility issues that exist. So the main thing is when I click on this PDF document, actually no, let me hold off on that first. So the first things we wanted to do is relates to accessibility. We wanted to make sure that we had the accessibility and action wizard tools on our toolbar. So I'm going to remove them. And we wanted to make sure that we had the content order and then tags pane on the navigation panes over here. So I'm going to remove those as well. Now this is what you see normally by default when you open Acrobat Pro DC. All right, so to add the tools back that you need, you're going to go and click on the tools button. You're going to go down here to the protect and standardize section, see accessibility, and add it. That shows up on your right hand side over here. Now you're going to go into customize and you're going to click action wizard. Click add. That shows up again over here on the right side. Now when we go and open a document, because you don't see the panes show up, they only show up when you have a document open. You only see this page thumbnails one, the bookmarks one, and the attachments one. Those are there by default. To add the other panes that you may need, you're going to go into content, and you're going to right click on this empty area, left click on content. I'm going to right click on the empty area, left click on order, and then I'll right click again and then click on tags. You're mostly going to work in the tags panel. The other two are there mainly for like content or order issues, but for the most part, you're going to work in the tags panel. All right, so
Corey, sorry to
yes.
interrupt. There was a question about what logical reading order means.
Yes. All right. So logical reading order has to do with the normal flow of the document. Like for example, with Seven Woods, the expectation is that I'm going to start from the Seven Woods, go to 1904, the folly of being comforted, and then start reading the text literally left, right, top to bottom, all the way down through the text. If this were a series of columns on a page like you would experience with a newspaper, the logical reading order is not to go left, right, top to bottom, but it may go left, right, top to bottom through that first column and then cycle back up through the second column. And then you'll start reading that. So when you think about logical reading order, it has to do with what is the expected format or way that the person is supposed to receive the information in this document. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so one thing you can do, this is an image-based PDF. The way I know this is if I click on it, the whole entire document goes blue. It's kind of a quick way for you to tell whether or not, if you try to select any text, you can't select text, it's just blue. Another way to confirm this is, I have my computer sound turned on, is to go into the view menu, go down to read out loud, click activate read out loud. This is a built-in screen reader for, well, not screen reader, but a built-in text-to-speech tool for Acrobat Pro. And so if I go back after I turned it on, I go back and I click read this page only.
Warning, empty page.
It's a little low, but it says warning, empty page. You and I can visually see there's text there, but it will not actually recognize that text for us, right? So the easiest way to deal with image-based PDFs is the first thing you will need to do is actually have it recognize text. And so you will do this by clicking on Scan in OCR. Up at the top, you'll see recognize text. And we're going to say in this file. And next, it's set for all pages. You can do it a page at a time if you want, but usually do all pages. If the language is English, you can set it to English. You also have other languages here as well. No need to go through the settings. By default, you leave everything. Set it as English, searchable image, and set it for 600 dots per inch. All right, so then we'll go recognize text. Now it goes through and essentially creates a layer which is accessible text.
Yesterday, your well-beloved's hair has threads of gray and little shadow.
Now, because I have the speech tool on, if I click anywhere or highlight any text, it's going to read that information back to me.
0 heart. 0 heart. If she'd but tumb her head, you'd know the folly of being comforted.
All right, and same thing here.
Adam's curse.
And I'm going to go and turn that off. All right, so deactivate that. So what I have now is text that is accessible, and follow me. It's accessible, meaning that someone can access it, but is it user-friendly? No. Thank you for the head shake, Regina Young. All right, so basically what that means is it's accessible. If someone were using the text-to-speech tool like we just had turned on, and they can visually decide where they want to select and read, and they can do that. But if it's a screen reader user, they're stuck in a position of having to read left, right, top to bottom throughout the entire document to access all the information. For a 1-page, 2-page, 3-page document, probably not a big deal. Much longer document, much more challenging. So you also notice that there are no tags available. Right, so nothing's identified as paragraphs, or nothing's identified as headings or anything like that, right? So there are a couple of ways that we can go about adding tags to this document. All right, so the easiest thing to do is simply go over here in the tag tree, you open it up, you right click where it says no tags available, and you go add tags to document. And Adobe will scan and try to infer where things are supposed to go. So it gives you a recognition report. I don't ever really pay attention to it. You can if you like. Once you've had it go back to the tags tree, and you can see what it guessed. So it's recognizing this image as, some kind of text in a paragraph or something. It's recognizing this first one as a heading 3. I will talk about why that's an issue. And then it goes down to 1904 as a heading 4. And if I continue to just move down in the tag tree, you can see how it's structured the document. So the text is there, still accessible, not exactly what I'm looking for though, right? So if I go up to this first heading, normally what you want.
Corey, can I interrupt you for a second?
Please.
We did have a question of asking if you can repeat how you got the tags.
Yes, sure.
Thanks.
I'm going to go and I'm going to right click where it says tags, and I'm going to delete the tag. So this is where we started. We had a document that had recognizable text after we did the recognized text portion. There are no tags, and all I did was right click on no tags, and then I click add tags to document. All right, so I'm gonna close the recognition report, and I'm gonna go back to the tag tree. And this is after we've gone and added tags to the document, just automatically that way. All right, so after you add tags, once you get used to this, you manually start to understand that anytime you have a title or the main heading on a document, you always want that to be like an H1. Any subheadings after that, you want those to be H2s. If there are subheadings, then they're H3s. But then if they bounce back to subheadings, so if you go from like In the Seven Woods would be an H1, The Folly of Being Comforted would be an H2. That's kind of how you as a designer are making a decision about how you want someone to be able to kind of navigate this resource, okay? And so what I'm going to do is, first thing I want to do is we've had our tags identified. There's thrown some figures in here, which we don't necessarily want to identify as figures, but there are ways to kind of deal with that too. So I'm going to pull up the accessibility report so we can see what it's identifying as errors and what we need to take a look at, because this is something you're going to commonly follow and do when it comes to dealing with the recognition or of accessibility errors, right? So before I do that, I'm going to show you another way to come in and actually add your tags. All right, so I'm going to go to the same document. I'm going to delete the tags again, so no tags available. So we're back in the same place. And so the next thing you can do, or the other option that you can use for actually adding tags, would be to use the action wizard. So I click on the action wizard, and the options that pop up under here, the very first one is make accessible. This is the one we're normally going to use to add tags. So if I click make accessible, there is a big start button here. It's saying this is the file we're focused on, correct? Yes. And so we'll click start, and you'll notice under all these different options we are going to run through before we finish running the, before we get to the end rather. So we click start, and it's asking us about the document description. There's no metadata. There are no properties that have been pulled out of them. The main thing you're concerned with is a title. You have to add a title. So we will say from the 7 woods. If you don't add a title, you will get an error for title. So I'm going to actually not add a title just so you can see. So I click OK. That same recognize text thing that we did, it will try to do this automatically. So we could have done this before we actually scan the document. So we'll say OK. So it's doing the same thing for the most part. It's just running through a different series of steps to get there. All right, now it's asking, do we want to detect any form fields? Skip this. It's always much easier if you manually add form fields when you deal with any documents. It would also save you a lot of headaches to manually add form fields later. So skip this step. It's going to ask you about reading language. English is okay. And then it's going to ask you it's going to ask if it can detect all the figures in there. You say okay. Now, when it identifies these figures, it's going to say, do you want to provide alternative text description or mark it as decorative? I'm going to mark it as decorative so you can see how there may still be some challenges. These are not really decorative images, but you'll see. So mark it as decorative, and then you can just continue to go through. And my goal is to try and hide these things so that they're not features that the screen reader would try to pull out. So I'll click Save and Close. After this, it automatically runs an accessibility checker. And then that identifies our issues. So under Document, again, the 2 errors I told you about earlier, logical reading order and contrast. If I look at the document, it's pretty easy to infer how I'm supposed to actually read through this document, right? So that's you doing a manual check. There's no real way to get rid of it other than right click on it and say this passes. That's how you can get rid of it. You can look at the color contrast. Is this fine in terms of color contrast? Can anybody who say maybe colorblind see this okay? All right, and so if you want to pass it, right click on it, you can say pass. And then when it gets the title, it says title failed, and that's because we did not add a title. So I can right click on it and say fix, in which case it pulls that same description window up again, and I have to add a title. So in the 7 woods, it is not required that you add a subject or an author or a keyword. Those are recommended things, but it's not required. So when I click OK, you see now title has passed. The next set of errors have to do with alternative text description. Now we marked all of those things as decorative, right? So they technically shouldn't be an issue. It's still recognizing those things as an issue though. And that's because there's something there, but we're not quite sure what. One way to fix these, and this is probably a little bit more advanced, is if I go here, one thing you can do when you identify something in a document and you want to see where it is in the tag tree, like if I just go to the tag tree, maybe a little hard to figure out where all of these different things are because it's not fully expanded and I'm not sure where that's at. But if I go back to accessibility, it's highlighted. Let me see if I can, actually it won't highlight it there. Let me see if I can pick the text right before it maybe. One thing you can do is select some text and find tag from selection. All right, and so here, the next thing was going to be that artifact which pops up. All right, and when you artifact something, you're essentially saying, let's hide it in the background. We want whatever assistive technology to skip right over it. We don't want it to be recognized even as a decorative figure in any kind of way. So an easy way to deal with that, and this is how you would artifact anything in a PDF, is you go to the underlying information, you would right click on it, you would go change tag to artifact. You don't make any changes to the information under this page. You usually set it as a page artifact type. You don't check any boxes or anything like that. You say okay. Now what that does is that creates an empty tag where you have this artifact here. Whenever you encounter empty tags, as long as they're empty, meaning that there's no nested information, you can then delete those simply by clicking delete. Okay? And then it moves on to the next item. So I'm I'm just moving the down arrow. I've encountered the next artifact. So let's fix that. Expand it, right click on it, change tag to artifact, click OK. It's an empty tag now. I'm going to delete it. Okay. And so you continue on through the document that way as you fix and remediate some of these issues. So I'm going to come back up here to my accessibility checker. We still have those 7 issues there. I want to check and see if this has been addressed and if it's still a problem in the accessibility checker. So I will right click on it and I will go to check again. Now it removes those 2 items that I fixed.
Corey, we have a question about artifacts.
Sure.
Why can you just delete an artifact? As in the case, those figures are not, is it because those figures are not needed?
They're not needed. So you can delete any empty tag. There are times when you're going to create a PDF and there will be nothing here but this little box. There's no text. There's a box. Perfect example is, let me come back to our Word document here. This is a structured one. All right, that's the wrong one. Let me come back. All right, now Adobe, there it is. All right, so this little purple area here, this is whenever you, in your Word document or in your PowerPoint document, you know how sometimes you will use a space, you'll use the enter key or whatever to create that kind of spacing you want between your paragraphs or your sentences. When you move it over to PDF, the PDF is identifying those spaces as a character. And so it creates that little paragraph tag for it. There's no text there. There's no underlying information there, right? So this is something you can artifact and get rid of this. The reason this can be a problem is because a screen reader can read through it and then will read those blank lines at times. And so to make it a lot cleaner, you can do a fix that you can, I can help you with on the Word side, or you can come over here and say, this is nothing. I can change this to artifact, click OK. Now I have an empty paragraph tag. I can delete it. So it doesn't matter whether it's an artifact tag or a paragraph tag or whether a list tag or whatever. If there's an empty tag there and there's no usable information, you can always set it as an artifact first and then delete the empty tag. Does that make sense? Perfect. Okay. So next thing I wanted to show you is, and I tried to do it going this way, but it was easier in the accessibility checker. When you identify issues and you're clicking through them, it's highlighting what those issues are. If you want to find that issue in the tags panel so that you can go and fix it, right click on it and say show in tags panel. And it will move you directly to that tag. I tried to do it another way, but this is the easier way. So we'll go through. Again, we'll change it to an artifact, click OK, and then we'll just delete the empty tag. So I'm not going to go through the rest of them. It stays there, says check again, and that's how you can go through. But I am going to go and identify the heading issue. All right. Now, why is this an issue? All right, this is an issue because we have it labeled as an H3. Normally, the very first heading that should be at the top of the page of your beginning of your document should be an H1. Now in PDFs, you can use H1s at the top of every page if you wanted to. You can use H1s as much as you want. You're not supposed to necessarily do that. You should identify whether it's a main heading or if it's a subheading or if it's a subheading and things like that. And you do that by main headings being H1s, subheadings being H2s, and sub-subheadings being H3s, and so on and so forth. You should not move from an H1, a main heading, to a sub-subheading, an H3. It should always move in the order of 1 to 2 to 3, and so on and so forth. So what some people get confused about is that they think this is the first heading, so I'm going to label it H1. This is the second heading, so I'm going to label it H2. This is the third heading, so I'm going to label it H3, H4, H5. That's not how you actually structure it. You structure it the same way you would think about an outline or a table of contents. All your subheadings are H2s. All of your sub-subheadings are H3s, and so on. So this is an issue because we have this labeled as an H3. All right, so the way to change this is you can double click on it, or I'll hit escape to go back. I'll just click out of it rather, or I can just hit F2. And now I can actually edit that and make that an H1. Once I type in H1, I can hit enter. That changes this to an H1. So if I come back to my accessibility checker and check again, it's still popping up as an issue. Now, why is that still popping up as an issue? I'm going to go back to show in tags panel. The reason, and it highlights it for you on the next one, is that it goes from an H1 to an H4, which would be like going from the main heading to a sub heading. That's not what it's supposed to do. So we can identify whether 1904 really should be a subheading or not. I'm going to assume, I'm just going to, for the purpose of this, just assume it's a paragraph. I'm not going to make it a heading. So I'll leave that one the same. I'll go to my H4 and I'm going to change that to a paragraph tag, which is just a P. And then I'm using the arrow key to go down through these. All right, so when I get to folly of being comforted, I actually want that to be an H2. So I'm gonna hit F2, and I'm gonna change that to an H2, and I'm gonna hit enter. And now I can continue to move down through the document to fix any of these. I want this to be expanded. Adam's curse is an H2. So I'm gonna make that an H2. And so now I'm continuing to move through the document. This has identified a whole bunch of things where it's kind of all over the place here as far as how it recognizes this text. And I'll show you a way we can actually go through and fix that manually. But you can see how the recognition is going to where it would read left, right. It goes from actually reading left to right all the way across 2 pages. And so there are a lot of issues that need to be cleaned up and fixed order-wise in order to make this work right. So I'm not entirely happy with how this turned out. All right, so I'm going to show you how to do that manually to go through all of this. Before I do that, let me just stop the share real quick and ask you if there are any questions about the remediation part of what we were just doing and how you would kind of manually step through the PDF to do some fixes, or through the tags panel to do any fixes. Make sense? Cool. All right, so let's talk about how you would manually go through this document. Let's say I've done the text recognition, but I'm not happy with the way it's set the order, and I want to fix this on my own. So I am going to close out of this Make Accessible. I'm going to click on Accessibility. And what I'm going to do is deal in the reading order panel.
Or now you just need to share your screen again.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'm back here. I was in the Action Wizard again, so I'm just closing out of that. And what you can do is we're going to go back into the accessibility panel here. And what we want to work with is the reading order. All right, so in the reading order, what we're going to do is we are going to strip all of the order that's been added automatically and kind of play around with this. So let me show you a few things in the reading order first. So in the reading order, these are all of the different content elements that are there that we can choose. We can identify something as a paragraph. This is another way to kind of manually go through and identify things. If you want to change something from a paragraph to a heading and so on. This is also where you would go in and kind of set the order if you wanted to set the order of some things. So let's look at structure types. So when this first one shows page content groups, page order is the order it's going to read in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You'll see the numbers that pop up. Make this a little bigger. That pop up to the left, top left of each box. You can also have it so that you can view it by structure type. So you can see how they're identified. So this is a paragraph tag, meaning it gets read as some text or other. And this goes in, here's my H1, my paragraph, my H2. So just like I would in a tags tree where I'm going through and doing F2 and changing some things, I can do that in the order panel as well. So if I click on this item here, I'm like, I really don't want that to be anything. I want that to be in the background and identified as an artifact. This was grayed out and this whole section becomes available now that I've selected one of these content groups. So I can click background and that removes that block, which means it's no longer in the reading order. And if I show it under page content order, you'll see that this is now number 1 from In the Seven Woods. So let's go back to structure type. And we had our H1, we had our paragraph 1, we had our H2. These are our paragraphs, and it's identifying all the others as paragraphs. And then there's our H2. So everything looked great until we got to about page 3. And you can see some of these content types kind of flying across the screen. Not looking great at all. It's kind of doing left, right, and all of this stuff. So that's not anything we're entirely happy with. So one way to quickly fix that would be to clear page structure. That's this button down here. Now, you don't want to do that after you've done all these fixes on your own. But if you're looking at it and you're not happy with what you see, just clear the page structure. And it's going to delete all of the current page structure so that you can do it manually on your own. And so all you're going to do is you'll have your reading order panel up here. You may have to move it around as needed, but you'll see these little cross bars here. It's kind of like a little cross. And then you just select the text that you want to identify. So I'll select it. Make sure all of the text gets selected, and then you'll click paragraph. All right. And I'm going to make sure I set it as structure type so we can see. So it's a paragraph. This we want to be our H2. The order that you move in is the order these items will be read, right? So this is a heading 2, so I click heading 2. If I go back to page content order, you can see the reading order for this page, 1 and then 2. And so I'll continue to step down. I'll select this text. This would be a paragraph. Keep going. Another paragraph. Paragraph. And then you'll keep on going throughout this section. So what we do sometimes is we may not even, other than the text recognition, we may just manually do it on our own, knowing that if it's a challenging document, we will have issues. And so it's easier to just go on ahead and select everything. So when I move to page 3, you'll notice that the reading order is fine. Rather, the content types are fine. And then the order, it kind of tells you that it's moving in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then it must be selecting. There's 7, there's 8, there's 9. But then it goes 10, 11, and 12 is this other block of text down here. All right, so what I want to do is make some of these artifacts. So I'm going to move through, select 12, make that an artifact. I'm going to move to 2, select that one, make that an artifact. All right, so I'm getting rid of those. You'll see the page order is automatically changing. Now, the other thing you'll notice, and this is something I had a challenge with, and this is, again, you making the design decision, is as you move to some of these pages, on some of the pages, the text is, or rather the page numbers are recognized and placed in the reading order, but do you really want that to be number 8? All right, or do you want that to be maybe the first thing read on this page? All right, so that goes to how you start kind of shifting the reading order around. Number 11, do you, rather, yeah, this page content, which is again the page number. Some of the times when we think about this, we want the page number to be read first. So if I'm receiving information in a linear fashion, I go to a page, it reads it to me. This is how it's set right now. It reads it to me, and then if the page number is identified, it reads that last before moving to the next page. From a cognitive standpoint, that's going to be a little confusing that it's reading page 90 after I've read page 90. Right? Normally when we turn the page, we look and see what's the page number and then we start reading down. So what we may do is move the page number up in the reading order or just get rid of it altogether. There are times when we make decisions to get rid of it altogether if the student knows that they just have to go through this specific set of 8, 9, 10 pages or whatever. And then there are other times where we may move it up in the reading order so that it is in the correct location. So if I want to change the reading order, one thing I can do is page content order, and you can look at show order panel. This moves you to the order panel up here, which is just above the tags panel. This is page 3, and you can see where the page numbers are, right? And so if I remove this real quick, you'll see page 92 at the bottom. So I will grab 92 and I will drag it up. I can't get it up there. Let me see, right there. So it moves page 92 to the top. And you'll notice the numbers reset to when they come to page 92. Now the first thing that's going to be read is 92. And then it will start with assault and battery, wind, blah, 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 and start reading on down. This is a way you can fix the order of documents because from a logic, just from a logistical standpoint, it's going to make more sense to have the page number first. And you're thinking about that a little backwards because we're thinking about from somebody who cannot visually see the content and they're receiving information in a linear fashion. So it forces you to think outside the box a little bit. All right, so that's just kind of a quick and dirty of moving through the order panel. Let me stop real quick and get some eyes on you guys because we have about 15 minutes left. And I just wanted to see if we had any questions about what we've been going over. This is, again, there's a lot to it. You have all the basics to do everything you need to do based on what we've kind of touched on. What we have not touched on, which we don't have time to touch on, are forms. I can do a quick thing on links, but that's kind of a part 2. If you want to do a part 2, I'm happy to do that so that you guys can get into some of these more detailed elements. And that goes to actually building out tables and building out lists and things like that. I'm just going to go back real quick to see what I can. Let me come back to slideshow real quick. All right. So on the slideshow, we've kind of talked about all of these features here. We talked about make accessible, but we didn't talk about document properties. The easiest way to get into properties, and these are things you kind of received in an automated format. I'm going to jump around a little bit just so we can get some of this other information in. Is if I go to the file menu and I go down to properties, this is where you get into document properties. So we did it by a quick fix through the accessibility checker. We did it by going through the automated action wizard for the Make Accessible tool. But when you come in the document properties under description, this is where you see the file name, you see the title, the author, the subject, and the keywords. Another useful feature is the application that was used to create the document. This is normally where you would see, for example, if I go to Word to PDF structure, go back in the document properties, you can see that the document was created using that PDF plugin tool for Word. All right, so this gives you information about the source document and where it came from, whether it be Adobe InDesign, whether it be Microsoft PowerPoint, whether it be Microsoft Word. So those things are useful to know when you encounter issues or if you want to see if you can locate or track down the source file. Some other useful features under document properties is this section under here where it says show and it has file name. Now you'll also get a title, you'll get a title error in your accessibility checker for two reasons. One reason is that it shows the file name for the title of the document up here, Word PDF structured underscore Adobe V1. The other reason is you do not have a title. So if you have a title, then great. You want to make sure that shows in the top up there. So if you go to initial view and you do show document title and click OK, you see it changes the title to converting Word to PDF. That was the title it was given. So those are the two main title fixes. Making sure the file name does not show and making sure you have an actual title for your document. Right, so again, file properties is how you get into document properties. These things are always good to know from a manual accessibility standpoint. If you decide, hey, I'm just going to do text recognition, I'll do the automated tags feature here in the tags panel, and then I'm going to manually step through everything I need to do. So I can do the tags, I'll go and fix them, I'll go in the document properties, I'll fix any tables or anything like that, and then I will go and run the accessibility checker after. So those are all things to kind of keep in mind. Any questions so far? None? Okay. Are we fried already? It's only been like an hour and 40. A little fried? All right. Okay, so, all right, let me do this. All right, so this kind of walks you through, we walked through the tags panel, how you add tags, how you change and edit those. We talked about how you do that in the reading order panel, how you affix those things. And we also talked about how you would actually fix that order of things in the order pane, which is over here on the left-hand side. So I'm going to pull up one of the other PDF docs. This one is the course syllabus for tags and lists. All right, so what we don't have here is a list item. All right, so I think I purposely left all of that blank so that we can go and do this manually. So I'm going to go and add a list, how you would do it manually in Acrobat. And then I'll, so it should take maybe a few minutes. So I will go and start it. So I'm going to go accessibility. I'm going to go to reading order. And you see we have a couple items here. And I'm only going to work in the list itself. So what you would normally do for lists is you would select the bullet point, make that a paragraph, then you would actually select the text and make that a paragraph. You'll notice none of the options that are under here have list or list item, right? So it's a little tricky, but you have to select it as such that it shows up, all right, or that the highlight actually captures all of the text that's intended. So it's a little tricky to play around with at times. But those are a couple items, right? And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to close the order panel. I'm going to highlight the text. And another thing you can do if you want to find where a specific tag is, and this is kind of what I was alluding to earlier, select that text first, go into the options button in tags and say find tag from selection. So these are the paragraph tags that I added. And so the way you would manually go about adding a list is we want to change these tags to a label tag. So this one here is a label, LBL. And this one here where the text is, we call L body tags. And we're going to do the same thing for this one. And then again, under the L body tag. All right, so these actually have to be nested. These two have to, these are technically one list item, and they have to be nested under that list item. So you go to the tag just above there, and then you would right click and say new tag. It should insert it right below. When you get the new tag, we're going to choose what type of tag it is. So we're going to choose a list item tag. We're going to click OK. We see it comes in as an empty tag. And I want to nest these two items under that list item. So whenever list item is selected, it selects those two items. Okay. And I'm going to do the same thing by adding another list item here. So I can right click because I wanted to go underneath. New tag, list item, and I'm going to add these two and nest them just under. All right, so we're not totally done because we have to identify this whole thing as a list. And so you go back to the top or whatever the tag is or just above the list, right click, new tag, and we are going to create our list. Click OK. And so once we do that, we will nest them underneath the list so that all of those items are selected under a list item. All right. Now what some people will do, and as we saw on the other one, they won't necessarily mess around with adding a label tag. They may just add everything under L body tag. So they'll select that bullet point and the text and make that all of an L body tag. So it just kind of depends. The reason that's important is because the screen reader, as we've kind of seen, will recognize certain elements and features. As long as there's a list, it will recognize, it will identify rather for a screen reader user when it's moving inside a list or when it's moving out of a list. It will recognize how many list items are in the list. So one thing I could do is just select all of this and make it all one big paragraph. The problem is the screen reader user would not know that this is a list of items. It would just read it as if it was paragraph text. And being identified as a list may be important to understanding what's going on. All right, so I am going to stop real quick. Let's see. So let's go ahead and stop. And I want to point out a couple of other things that I have done to help you guys. And this mainly goes to so we don't go too far over. So one thing I've done is I created a Google Doc which walks through step by step everything I've talked about here. And that is the link you should have received yesterday as well. The first part of it goes through setting up the tools pane, key features to consider or key features to know, setting up the navigation panes, navigating the keyboard. You can actually pull up the document properties by doing Control D if you want. It talks about editing tags, things to pay attention to in document properties. And then it also goes through fixing inaccessible PDFs, things we've touched on today. So how you add tags to an untagged PDF, option 1. Option 2, using the tag pane. Option 3, which I would not recommend, but you can use, I didn't show it to you guys today, but you can do it using the accessibility checker. How to go in and manually add your metadata. Working with existing PDF files, using the Make Accessible wizard, and it walks you through all those steps. Using a manual checking feature where you go through and you actually use the reading order to go through and manually add the tags you want to add. So all of that stuff has been added here. Some other things that I put in is how you would actually go in and tag your own lists. All right, and I've also added how you would go in and tag your own tables. We didn't talk about that today, but one of the exercise files has, actually the one we were just looking at has tables in them. So you can see how you would actually go in and tag tables as well. How you can manually create bookmarks, how you would add your own alternative text descriptions, and how you would create meaningful hyperlinks. Now what's not in here are forms. That's kind of a whole beast unto itself. But if we want to set up a part 2 and go through how to actually tag some of these very specific elements and features, I'm more than happy to set that up. So we have roughly about 3 minutes left, at least on our scheduled time. So I'm going to at least stop there and see if you guys have any general questions that we can at least address for all those stuff we've covered so far.
Just a quick suggestion, would it be possible to add all this content into a Blackboard course that we can enroll in so that everything is in one place? And I don't know if it would be possible to actually create like a
You mean like modules and
yeah,
exercise
exactly,
files and all that kind of stuff?
faculty. Yeah,
I
because
think
I feel like if I don't like actually practice this, it's not
Yeah.
gonna stay.
Yeah, we can do something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's actually a great suggestion. We'll work on that because all the information is already pulled. It's just a matter of coming up with the exercises for you to do it. But I think we can pull something together.
There's a question in the chat about how the screen reader deals with spelling mistakes.
Usually it will. That's a great question. Christine? How does it read them again? It identifies the lines, I know. Usually you'll get the little squiggly line in a Word document or in the PowerPoint. And it will, I can't remember how it reads it.
I believe
off
it
the top of my
actually
head.
says that it's misspelled.
I think it
If
does.
I remember
yeah.
correctly in Word anyway. And
Yeah.
then if it reads the word itself, it'll just do it phonetically. But if you're trying to fix mistakes, it will identify the spelling mistakes like you would see visually. It just announces that it's misspelled.
Correct. Yeah, I can't remember exactly what it says, like literally what the words it says are, but Christine would know better than I. Any other questions? Is the process similar for video content? Meaning, can you expand on that, Ibrahim?
So if we have an orientation video that we recorded and we need to make the video accessible, is the process for adding like tags and everything else similar, or is it very different?
Completely different beast. So the thing to think about for video content in terms of accessibility, it's not only captions, accurate synchronized captions for the video. You also want to consider whether or not the video player itself is screen reader accessible. Meaning, does it announce all of the controls? If I'm blind and I need to go and turn the video on and off using the play button, when the screen reader goes to the play button, does it announce that it's a play button, or does it just say button? So certain video platforms are more accessible than others. Like YouTube is accessible, Vimeo is accessible, Kaltura, the videos using Kaltura that we host on Blackboard. Those are accessible as well, but not every platform is the same. You want to make sure you have synchronized accurate captions. If the video has visual content, think about it this way: if it's a we have a lot of video only videos, quote unquote, that we show on where you might have some music kind of playing in the background, but there's all this other, title slides that pop up and people kind of doing things. Visually, if I cannot see that, I don't know what's going on in that other than that kind of background music. So is it necessary to have audio description to describe what's happening in the video, which actually can be expensive? You can also address that by just kind of putting in a blurb of text, which is kind of a script. It's a script describing what's happening in that video only version. So if there's no audio dialogue, no speaking back and forth, captions aren't necessary, but you may need a script depending on what's being shown. We do a lot of promotional videos that way. So it's something to think about when you're doing those kinds of promotional videos. Those are, I'd say, the three main things for videos: audio description, which describes as a scenery if necessary, accurate synchronized captions, and the video platform. If you are posting things like podcasts, then it's more so having the actual text transcript available to people as well. And Christine just checked it actually on her end. She said the screen reader actually says misspelled and then reads the word. All right, so this is a lot of information to digest, certainly a lot of information to digest over Zoom when you try to do a hands-on over Zoom. Again, I'm happy to extend this out. We do have the summer coming up, so if you guys want to do things like that and manually kind of walk through things where you would share your screen and we would kind of follow along and give you guidance, we're happy to do those kinds of things too, and we can do them in smaller chunks. I will work on Ibrahim's idea of trying to add it into a Blackboard course. That's something me and my team can actually sit there and work on. That may be an interesting exercise on our end. But if you have any other questions, feel free to ask right now, or feel free to kind of reach out to us offline at any point in time. We're happy to help in whatever way we can. All right, I think that's it. Take care, guys. Have a good one. And I appreciate you working with us.